Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Zeus. So Zeus is an interesting hero because for the majority of Dota's history, this hero has been pretty much the same. It's basically the magic damage version of Sniper. So they both do the same thing. They sit in the back from range and they do a lot of damage. It's just Sniper does physical damage, Zeus does magic damage. And they both kind of have the same weakness. When they sit in the back, they don't really love to get initiated on. They don't love to get jumped on because they're squishy, they are really slow, and so if they get initiated on, if you can use your spells on them and just burst them full to zero, then they're just completely out of the game and they have zero impact. Now, the thing that changed with Zeus that actually made him viable in high MMR and in pro games is that they added this shard to the hero and to all the heroes a couple years ago, and with that shard, they gave him an ability called Heavenly Jump, which gives him mobility so you can jump over cliffs, you can get out of sticky situations. It just makes you more survivable and more dynamic as a hero. But then in the last couple patches, they moved that shard to his main kit and made his passive damage ability, they made that the shard. So they switched the two abilities, which completely changes the hero. That's why I'm remaking the guide, because now with that jump as a main ability, which you can get obviously level 1, minute 1, or usually level 2 is when you skill it, it just makes this hero so much more dynamic because now you actually have spells in the lane that can make you more survivable. You don't get stuck in sticky situations nearly as much. You can jump over cliffs, you can secure runes, you can do so much in lane with this jump ability that it makes this hero actually a real hero now, which is completely different and completely changes the hero, even though it kind of does the same thing. Once you get to the later portion of the game, you're still dealing a ton of magic damage. It's just now it's not as reliable to actually kill you in the lane, in the mid game, or even late game when you have that mobility, which is really, really good. So I'm going to be focusing mainly on the mid version of Zeus because this hero plays 4 position and mid, and the 4 position is kind of like mid, just with most heroes that play 4 and mid, the only real difference is that 4 doesn't get as much gold, as much experience, as many items, doesn't have as much of an impact on the game, and so mid Zeus is kind of the same thing, so we're going to be focusing on that version of the hero. And like I said, the strengths are still the same, where you do magic damage from range. It's really hard. If you have a Zeus in the game, it's really hard to out damage a Zeus. It's so hard to deal with this hero's damage. If you can get to your items, if you can, stay safe on the map, you will just be dishing out insane team fight damage. The same weakness still applies. You are squishy, you are slow, you don't love to get initiated on, but at least now you have some tools to deal with that, which actually makes the hero viable. So that's Zeus, that's how to think about him in general. Now let's jump in and take a look at his abilities. So now that we understand Zeus in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to be that good magic damage hero like I talked about, that also now has a little bit of survivability and escapability with his new added jump kit, which is really cool now in Heavenly Jump. So we'll take a look at that in a second, but first we're going to look at Arc Lightning. It's his Q spell. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. You just cast it on a creep here, and then it jumps from that creep to all the rest of the creeps in the line there. And so this is honestly all the ability does. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. You're going to be using this ability to farm creeps, push out waves, get last hits in lane, also harass the enemy as well. And then it has a very low cooldown, so you can still use it in fights. It's not going to do as much damage as your other abilities, obviously, but because you can spam it in fights, it's still going to be really good, especially with your shard that you're going to get, which I'll take a look at in a second. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. The shard just gives you extra damage on all of your spells. So that's Arc Lightning. Next, we're going to take a look at Lightning Bolt. So Lightning Bolt is pretty straightforward and simple as well. You just cast it on an enemy, and then the enemy is kind of mini-stunned for a second and also takes a significant amount of damage. Now, I'm going to give this axe a ward here and place it down. That's an Observer ward, obviously, because that's the enemy axe. I can't see the Observer ward, but the one thing that this Lightning Bolt does as well, in addition to doing damage, is it actually reveals invis units and wards. So if I place it on the axe there's kind of this AoE, and I can see the ward, and for a short duration, it's revealed, so I can click it there. I'll have the axe place another one really quick, so you can see that if I shock the ground near it, it's revealed there, but then after a short duration, the vision goes away. So this works for wards. It also works for, heroes like Riki or Clinks, anybody with an invis ability in their kit. Also, it works on Shadowblade as well. So anything that's invisible, you can see. Now, the other thing that happens with this ability is that it also searches for targets. So obviously, if I click it over here, it's not going to hit the axe. But if I click it kind of close to the axe, but not right on the axe, it will actually shock the axe. So that's important to note because if the axe is in trees, or you don't actually see the axe, but you know that the enemy is there, you know he's somewhere around there, if you click the lightning bolt relatively close to his position, it will still shock him and give you vision of him. So that's also important to note. Very good ability, and this is your main ability for like doing damage later in the game. Obviously you're still going to be spamming arc lightning like I talked about, but this just does a ton of damage, especially once you get your shard. And now I'll just talk to you about the shard, because I've talked to you about it with these 2 damage abilities. So if you get the shard here, all that this shard does is pretty much just give you extra percentage of damage on your spells relative to the current health of the enemy. So we can see how much damage that my abilities were doing there, but now that I have this shard, it does a lot more damage. And then obviously I'm spamming this out, so this does good damage, but then it's also doing that percentage damage of their health. You can see how much damage I can do with this these abilities, and this ability, it's like I said, 1.6 second cooldown, very short. You can constantly spam it out, hit multiple heroes in it, very good. For doing insane damage, like I talked about. So next we're going to look at Heavenly Jump, and this is the ability that makes this hero actually dynamic, actually good in laning, and a real hero now, not just this kind of squishy, low MMR, pub stompy hero. So what this Heavenly Jump does is it pushes you in a direction, or allows you to jump in a direction, whichever direction you're going in. So if I'm walking this way and I press Heavenly Jump, I will jump in that direction. If I walk this way, I'll jump in that direction. But if I'm standing still, I will actually just jump in place. So keep that in mind. You're not automatically jumping forward, you can jump in place, which is important to note, not only for the fact that you can cast it without actually putting yourself out of position. So if you're, sitting in the mid lane, last hitting creeps, you don't have to jump forward, like you don't have to run back to jump forward. You can actually just jump in place, and that's important because, as you probably saw, when I cast this ability, a little bit of lightning comes out and shocks the nearest enemy hero, which is very important because that does a couple things. So the first thing it does is it actually slows the axe a significant amount, not fully, not like 100%, but it's still a significant amount of slow that they really don't move very well. The other thing is if we have the axe attack the Zeus here, and then I jump, the axe's attack speed is slowed significantly, which is important for 2 things. One, later in the game, obviously if you're slowing somebody's attack speed and they're on, attacking an enemy, or even you, that is important. But really in the lane, that is really important for allowing you to get denies and outlast hit your opponent without needing your spells. Because if you can just Heavenly Jump and slow their attack speed, then you can actually outlast hit them, because this hero has significant damage, has pretty good damage early on, pretty good base damage. So that's Heavenly Jump. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. There's really nothing else more complicated than that, but obviously it gives this hero a lot of mobility, a lot of survivability, and a lot of extra, things to do in the laning stage and later in the game with that slow and the attack slow and all of that, to make it not just this, not necessarily boring, but it's just this one-dimensional damage hero. There's actually a little bit of utility there built in as well. We already talked about the shard, static field that just gives you more damage based on the enemy's health. And then lastly, for the main abilities, we have Thunder God's Wrath. It's a pretty straightforward ability as well. We'll spawn a couple more enemies just so you can see how this works. So basically, this is a global ability, and it shocks every single enemy on the enemy team with this magical damage, and also gives vision. So you can see I cast it there, and all of the axes currently that exist take damage, and also they are revealed. Now keep in mind, this doesn't go through BKB, so if there's BKBs in a fight, you either want to pop this ability before the BKB goes off or right after it's done, so keep that in mind. It also doesn't reveal smoke, so if you hit this Thunder God's Wrath because you don't see anybody on the map and it doesn't reveal a bunch of heroes, that's because they were smoked. So keep that in mind. It's kind of a way that you can know if the enemy's smoked. You don't necessarily want to use it that way, but if you're losing and you think they're going to smoke on you guys, or you need to know where they are, during a Roche fight, that is kind of important to understand that you can do that to know if they are smoked. So that's Thunder God's Wrath. And then the last thing I'm going to be talking about is the Ags, because the Ags is really important and really good. You're going to be getting it in almost every game. So what you do is you can cast it globally, and it makes this little AoE, like cloud lightning bolt thing that periodically just shocks the enemy with a lightning bolt and reveals invis units there. That's all it really does. Again, straightforward and simple, but very, very good. High magic damage. So you can see how if you're in a fight and the fight starts, you can cast this, you can cast your ultimate, you can use your first round of spells. It's so hard for an enemy hero to deal with all of that damage, let alone, obviously you have your teammates going in, stunning them, using other spells. This hero just does insane amounts of damage once you have some items like this. Now, this is like a unit So when you place it down, you see it has a duration. There's also the center. So if I have this axe here run into the middle of it, he's obviously going to be taking damage, but he can click the center part, and then he can kill it before the duration is up. So you do need to be careful when and where you're using it, because if they can just turn right on top of it and just kill it instantly, kind of like a tombstone or anything else you're placing on the ground, obviously then it doesn't have the effectiveness that you want it to have. It's not like zoning out the enemy, it's not doing damage, it's not revealing invisible units, so keep that in mind. So that is Zeus. Those are his abilities. Now let's jump into a game and see how he's played. So now we're jumping into a replay here of Iceberg playing Zeus, and honestly, the laning stage is relatively simple, but I did want to show you a couple things. So basically, in the very beginning of this lane, I just want to show you how he's pretty much not using his Q spell very much at all. He's really only using his right clicks to get last hits. And this is important because this hero has good base damage. We can see with the stat items that he got, he has 65 base damage, which is pretty high, especially for a lot of mid laners or ranged mid laners especially. So we can see it's about a minute into the game, and he still hasn't used a single spell. Now, it's not that you never want to use this. It's just that when you can get away with not using your spells, especially early, you don't really necessarily want to, because you don't want to just run out of mana and not be able to cast your abilities. Plus, once you get to level 2, then you can see he casts his jump, and this is largely for a little bit of damage, obviously, and harass, but it's mainly for the slow and the attack slow in order to outlast his opponent, which is really important. So we can see how he has 2 denies. This is largely from good laning, but also because he was able to slow the enemy with his jump. And so you'll see in the laning stage, he's constantly using the jump. Any good player for a mid Zeus will constantly be using the jump to try to slow the enemy to get last hits, especially on the range creep, either to secure the range creep last hit for himself or to secure the deny on his own creep there. So that's the first part of the lane. Is obviously you want to get your Q spell to hit them as well as last hits as much as possible, but then using your jump ability to secure range creeps or secure range creep denies. Now this is the other big thing about Zeus that I want to show you here as well, is that he's able to use his jump to secure the water rune, which is really, really important, because obviously runes are huge on this hero. You want to be getting your bottle before 2 minutes every single time so you can get those runes, and then you want to probably use all of those charges so that you can get the rune. And we can see Puck is also a pretty good rune controller, but because he's able to jump over the cliff there, slow the Puck so the Puck can't get to his rune, he's able to secure that even though he had to be busy last hitting for a few seconds there because the Puck pushed the lane in. So I think that's just the perfect example of how you're going to be playing this hero in the lane. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. You're getting your last hits. You're not usually going to be killing enemy heroes unless they get really out of position, like they're diving your tower and the tower starts hitting them, and you can slow them a lot, or you're harassing them down really, really well. If you're against a decent player, though, he's probably not going to let you do that, and you usually just kind of trade farm for the most part in the beginning part of the lane. So now I actually jump to a different game. This was the game I wanted to show originally, but it had a little bit of a weird laning stage against the Nature's Prophet mid, so it was better to look at that other early laning stage, because that's generally what you want to be doing. But this is really important. Right around that 5 to 6 minute mark, right as you hit 6, you want to be having enough mana to help the side lanes with a kill like that, like we just saw him use his ult right as soon as he got 6, he immediately used it. This is just something you want to be doing with Zeus. Obviously, you can help the side lanes globally without actually TPing there, unlike a lot of other heroes, pretty much almost any other hero in the game. So that's really important to make sure that you have mana to do that, and that you're also looking to do that. You're just kind of keeping an eye out in the side lanes to see if anybody's low or there's any way that you can help a gank out in that way. And obviously, that's something where you can communicate with your team, like, hey, I have my ult, go on them. If they're low, try to set up a kill because I have some contribution, and while you can still stay in the mid lane. And so that's really important right around that 5 to 6 minute mark. Now, I skipped ahead a few minutes, and the next thing I want to show you is basically what Zeus needs to be doing in the mid game. So traditionally, this hero just wants to farm until like 15 minutes, until he gets his shard. Then you really want to get more involved because you're going to be doing way more damage. At this point, what you're mainly going to be doing is pushing the wave out mid. And in the past, when they had that small camp near mid lane, yes, you could farm a lot quicker. So farming mids are probably going to be less popular, but even though Zeus is a farming mid, he's also a very, very good D-pushing mid, which is super important. So I think one of the things that's going to become popular and one of the things everyone's going to emphasize is pushing mid as fast as possible, really trying to take that tower early because you're not going to be, farming as much. But Zeus is going to be good because he can easily D-push against heroes like Nature's Prophet, against DK, against any hero that really wants to push the tower down quickly and doesn't want to just focus on farming. Zeus is going to be pretty good against that. So you can see he's looking to get involved when he can, but mainly he's just farming a camp here and there, really pushing out the wave, looking to use his ultimate off cooldown. And I think that's the main way you're going to be playing most mid laners these days, especially Zeus, and he's really good for that. Until about 15 minutes, like I said, you get your shard, you can be doing a lot more damage at that point. I jumped ahead probably 10-15 minutes. They're actually losing pretty hard, and that's because they weren't able to take any fights. And it's probably also because he's been dying a good bit, because he's pretty much been out of position. They've not really played super well, but they actually do end up winning this game. And I wanted to show you, this is pretty much how you want to be taking team fights before you get your Ag Scepter. So you're going to be farming a lot, and you're going to be sitting in the back. And before you get your Ags, obviously you just have your normal spells, so you do have to cast them in the team fight. It's not like you can just sit back completely, so you have to be at this perfect position, like in to cast your abilities, but then far enough away that you don't get gone on. So we can see the Nature's Prophet TP's in to try to get him in the back line, but look at him, he's staying way behind, even behind the Dazzle. Dazzle is a backline hero. Dazzle's a backline support that doesn't want to get gone on, but he even stays behind the Dazzle until he knows that a few of the heroes that would jump on him get gone on. Then, you know, they end up turning the fight, they end up getting kills, which really are helping them out to turn this game. I think they were down like 19k gold, now it's down to 13 because of that one fight. And you can see, as long as he stays alive, he dishes out insane amounts of damage with just his two items here. Obviously, all he has is Arcane Boots, E-Blade, and E-Blade even does less damage than Sange and Kaya, which is usually the item that you're going to be building, but obviously he gets this for defensive purposes against all the heroes that are going to want to do physical damage against him to save himself. But still, this is how you want to be playing Zeus in that mid-game team fight before you get your Ags, is you need to play that perfect line. Obviously, you have this jump to help you there, but it's still a fine line between playing too far in and getting gone on and dying. And sitting back far enough that you can cast your spells while also not getting killed. So it's very kind of difficult to sometimes have that line. It depends on the game and depends on the heroes. Obviously, we saw him sitting in the back, but NP went on him still. But it is very important to kind of feel that out, know where that is, and hit that razor's edge to be effective with Zeus in the mid game. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is basically a late game team fight when he does have his Ags. So pretty much Zeus, like I said before many times, it's straightforward, simple. He has the same strengths and weaknesses as he always has. Lots of magic damage, sit in the back, don't get gone on. He obviously has that jump, like I've mentioned a million times, that allows him to have extra mobility and survivability. But really, once you get your Ags, that's when you can dish out insane amounts of damage and have even more offerings in the team fight. So we can see how far back he's sitting, just like usual. He's literally like blinking into the fountain to try to make sure that he doesn't get gone on. The NP jumps in, and now he uses his ultimate, or his Ags right there, kind of in the middle of the fight, back in the fight, where the enemy heroes are kind of looking to escape. And this is what you want to be doing with your ultimate, or with your Ags here, is you don't want to cast it like too defensively. You want to cast it fairly aggressively, kind of in the middle of the enemy team, or where they're going to be running or where they're going to be escaping to. You don't want to cast it in a place where they can just run away from it. So he kind of casts it further out. He casts it sort of at the entry point and the escape point. So if they come up the ramp, or they go back down the ramp, they pretty much are going to either run into it, or they only have a little area on the side to run around it. That's really important. Casting it at choke points, casting it where the enemy team is located, or where they, like, it's bad for them to run away from it. That's always what you want to be doing with your ultimate there, or with your Ags there. And otherwise, like I said before, just stick in the back, cast your spells, try not to die, buy items that allow you to survive. Because once you have the Kaya and whatever you're building that into, and once you have your Ags, from there it's all about survivability. It's about Blink, it's about Linken's, it's about sometimes even BKB. A lot of times it's you're not really going to be buying BKB a lot, but mostly it would be Aeon Disc that you would be buying on this hero. But still, like, anything to allow you to survive, because the more you survive, the more damage you can get off, the better you're going to be in the game in general. And they actually do end up winning this game, which is kind of crazy from that insane deficit. So anyway, that's my Zeus guide. I hope that helps you guys understand how to play Zeus better. He is a very, very good hero. Obviously, he's been nerfed a little bit recently, but still, I think he's still very good. Dishes a ton of damage, especially at lower MMRs where you can basically secure your farm. This hero is going to be insane in those games. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and consider donating to me or supporting me at Patreon. If you want coaching, I also have coaching at Patreon as well, and be sure to join the Discord. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.